Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another You Be the Behavior Consultant. It's been a while, I know, but we are back, and I'm happy to be back with you doing another live stream. I was out for a little bit having cataract surgery, but all is good now, so I can see, and all is well. So we are going to talk about well, I guess for lack of a better word, I called it sort of weird behaviors that animals do, and I called it weird animal behaviors, which kind of made it sound like the animals were weird, but it's really the behaviors that we're going to talk about. Hey, Cynthia, good to see you here. Yes, and we're going to have a Tower Talk tomorrow for members, so we'll get to talk about all your fun things that you've been working on in the time that I had to take a little break there from being on camera and chatting with you all. So again, we're going to be talking about sort of the weird things that animals do, and so yeah, let's just get into it. No waiting. So if you're new to us here, this is You Be the Behavior Consultant, a live stream I try to do on Mondays. We had to take a little break there due to work commitments and personal commitments, but how it works, I present a topic for discussion, and then I have some questions to prompt your participation because we like to be participatory here. And then we'll get into the topic more with some videos. I've got some fun videos to look at. And then we'll recap everything at the end. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about weird animal behavior or things that maybe seem irrational to you. Like it doesn't make sense that the animal is doing that. You know, why would they do that weird stuff? And so for all of you that are listening today, I'm hoping you might think about, is there any time that you might have observed something that you thought, man, that's really weird. Why is that animal doing that behavior? It doesn't make sense to me. And it might have been something that you think isn't necessarily bad behavior. You may not think that it's unpleasant, but a lot of times I think most of us are like, ooh, I don't like that the animal's doing that, but sometimes it's not necessarily undesired. But if it was undesired, did you find it difficult to change? And if so, what made it challenging to address? And if you did address it, were you successful? And maybe you have some strategies you'd like to share with us that helped you address the challenging situation. So maybe all of you have had an opportunity to think about this since I posted the topic, and maybe you have some weird examples to share with me. If you don't, I can share a couple examples of just some fun stuff to look at that isn't necessarily undesired, just to kind of get you thinking about this topic while we're thinking about the questions here. I think this is a fun one that I posted on social media, but I think this is kind of a weird behavior in general, but it's kind of fun and interesting. And I'll just let it play and let you guys think about these questions here. But this was a video of a Jaguar interacting with some sage. And, you know, when we think about cats and catnip, it is really kind of a weird behavior, right? Why do cats get so excited or aroused when they interact with certain plants? And certainly you'll see this with this jaguar here. So let's take a look at this video while I let you guys think. And hi from Annetta in Denmark.
So also what I think about with stuff like that is it makes me think about that'd be a great enrichment to leave them with, you know, like if you could collect some of that.
Get a clipping of it.
Yeah.
We have a baby cologne that's a massive reinforcer for him as well.
If you get sage branches to, put through after you're done with a session, he would be really happy with that. But then like when you leave a session, he'd be like, "Thank you."
He'd be really,
and not be worried about you guys leaving because he'd be like, "Thanks."
I think it's dead, but he's very happy.
Great enrichment. It smells great.
Doesn't it smell beautiful?
Mm-hmm.
Better than white bangles.
For sure. Look at his head.
It's okay.
He's happy. Nice to know that you're not the most reinforcing thing in there.
No.
Nice view of his claws.
This is so good, buddy. Nope.
You can make an enrichment video of all the videos I have of all the animals.
You should. Oh, so good. Oh, look at the drool. Oh.
He's not chewing on his feet.
Oh. I'll take this behavior any day.
Yeah.
Oh.
I would have known that. I'd start throwing that in these exhibits.
I was trying to get it to grow.
Well, I mean, cut little pieces of it
Yeah.
and just, you know,
Yeah.
get them.
There's one on there.
Okay.
Hopefully he doesn't find that one before.
How much constantly cost? Think you buy a couple and
I'm going to plant some out here. I've decided.
Yeah, to have her, I mean, to
Yeah.
be able to offer that
Oh, yeah.
at the end of your session would be so awesome.
And it's just the white sage. He doesn't respond to the other sage like that. The autumn,
yeah.
the hot lips I tried getting. Nope. That plant's collateral.
Yeah. I love you, Sage.
Hey, Hilda, the roots came up on that one.
I wonder what it's going to be like when we bring the kittens. When we bring the kittens in here and see what the kittens now do.
Oh, wow.
Oh, there we go.
I know it's kind of a long video, but I think it's so much fun to watch him doing that when he runs off at the end. And, we have a hello from Sweaty Dubai. Hot and sweaty Dubai and stormy in Denmark. We're pretty hot and sweaty here in Texas right now, too. And Annetta says that would be normal for a giant panda as well. Yeah, and I think, it's interesting because it's normal for some species, but not for others. But again, for me, like when I sit back and I think about that behavior, to me, part of it is like, well, animal people might be accustomed to seeing that in some species, but also when you sit back and think about it, it's such a weird behavior, right? So certain plants that can release certain chemicals, if they burst parts of the plant, can trigger certain responses, can evoke certain responses in animal and certain species. I mean, that is really quite different and weird, I think. So that's one example. There's lots of different examples that we can get, and it's not necessarily undesired, right? It's not necessarily a bad thing, but there might be some other behaviors that you could think of that you might be like, ooh, I don't know, why the animal is doing that one, and it seems so different and unusual. Another one I thought about that may not necessarily be something that people think of as undesired is when animals do vocalizations that aren't typical for the species. So here's another one that this bird's actually pretty famous. It was the one that was in the David Attenborough video, but this is a lyrebird that's mimicking all sorts of sounds that aren't quote lyrebird sounds, but they're sounds that were in its environment. Some of them are man-made, and some of them are made from other animals, but you'll probably recognize some of the sounds. So you guys getting any ideas of any other things that you've observed? Any animals that you've worked with? Nothing coming up yet? I can give you another example of another one that may not necessarily be undesired, but maybe the lyrebird may have caused you guys to think of this one. But this one is my own parrot who, learned to mimic sounds that humans make, right? And he doesn't really make any sounds that I would consider, I don't know, Amazon parrot sound. Well, he makes some Amazon parrot sounds, typical Amazon parrot sounds, but he mostly makes these sounds.
What's 1 plus 3? 4. What's 7 minus 3? 4. What's 12 divided by 3? 4. Good boy. You know your math.
Oh yeah, I like that one, Chris. Undesirable to me, but my dog loves to roll on dead things. Yeah, I think that's a great example. And I think that'd be a great question to ask. Why do dogs like to roll on dead things? I think that's a great example. So I'm glad that you brought that one up there. Yeah, because and with the parrot one, obviously I wanted a parrot to do that, but if you think about it, if you heard a parrot making those sounds out in the wild that had no contact with people, you would think, oh, that's really weird. Why is that parrot doing that? And Mr. Helene says, I have a penguin that running anti-clockwise around a circuit runs normally, but when she runs clockwise, she skips. It's the cutest thing I've seen, but I've never tried to discourage it. Yeah, that's another great example. Yeah, I like that. You would ask yourself, why? Why does she skip when she goes this direction, but when she runs the other direction, she does it normally? Oh yeah, those are great examples. I like that. Thank you for sharing that. Cool. I love this. All right. Well, so let's talk a little bit more about, what are these weird things, or irrational might be another word we could use. I kind of like weird a little bit because irrational maybe sounds a little extreme. So what might seem weird to us, we might think of as rational to the animal. And I know a lot of you here are very familiar with this information, but maybe somebody who's listening to this hasn't heard this before. But we've heard that expression, "the rat is always right," and it was really fun to be able to find the original reference on it. But Julie Vargas, some of you may know who she is. She is Skinner's daughter, but she said that Skinner first said it to Ogden Lindsley when Ogden was a graduate student of Skinner's, and he said the rat is always right, and that he also said to his colleague Sidney Bijou, the animal is always right. So there's a couple references for when he first made these statements. So that means that our first step is to kind of let go of the idea that maybe the animal is kind of crazy or doing something that doesn't make any sense, that it's irrational, and trust that the behavior is a function of its consequences, and that there also may be some ethology or phylogeny that prepares it to do those behaviors in some of our cases, like when we think about the responding to whatever those plants are releasing for the jaguar, or maybe the dog going, I want to roll in dead things. And obviously in a lot of cases it can be positive reinforcement, but it can also be negative reinforcement that maintains these behaviors that we see. It also made me think about the law of effect, which is credited to Thorndike, Edward Thorndike, back in 1905, that states any behavior that's followed by appetitive outcomes is likely to repeat it, and any behavior followed by aversives is likely to discontinue. But of course, as we were stating, that was built upon with reinforcement. So that idea of the law of effect is a great starting point, but we can take it much farther when we look at reinforcement and punishment. And I'm not going to go into those definitions. I know you guys know all that stuff. But what I really wanted to bring your attention to is how disturbing behavior can make sense. And there's a really great paper that those of you that are members, I have a direct link and where you can download this paper by Joe Lang and Paul Andranis from '84 that is super cool. It's all about making sense of hallucinatory behavior in humans. And as we often see, people look at something like people having hallucinations as making no sense, and that it must be that the person is having these private events that are a result of mental illness, and that they couldn't possibly have rationality in these hallucinations. And the article really goes into great detail with a number of examples of how these hallucinations can result in reinforcement for people. And one of the examples was a woman who was throwing plates into the air, and she was saying it was because she needed to test the static electricity, and it was kind of getting worse to the point that she went outside and she hit a telephone pole with a brick. And of course the neighbors were seeing this, and they called the police, and she was saying, the lights were getting really bright in her home and she needed to address the electricity. And it turned out that when she was under stress, these hallucinations would get worse. And what had happened is she and her boyfriend had just broken up. He had left. She was worried about paying the bills and having financial distress. And that's when her hallucinations about the lights becoming brighter and her having to address them would get worse. And so going outside and hitting the pole and having the police called would lead to hospitalization and basically relief to her financial problems, a solution to her financial problems. So basically it was an example of negative reinforcement. Basically she gets to escape her financial distress and being kicked out of her apartment. And so there's a lot of really good examples of that in this article. And so I highly recommend you check that article out, and so you'll see how some of these things that you would think are disturbing and just a result of mental illness are actually logical to the person as a way to address a situation. And it's not always negative reinforcement. It could be positive reinforcement too. So some comments here. Alex says, my yellow lab loves to lean against shrubs and walk back and forth. I think the branches scratching feels good, but it looks goofy. Yeah, that's a great example. Absolutely. And Chris says, how are weird behaviors different from stereotypies? I'm so glad you brought that one up, because that it is a perfect segue into some of our animal examples, because I do have some of those repetitive behaviors in there as an example. And how about superstitious behavior can look weird to some? And that, I think, maybe that penguin's example could have been a superstitious behavior. So maybe the skipping is a superstitious behavior on the one direction that is part of that got reinforced as part of doing the behavior in that direction. Don't know for sure, but it could be something to investigate, right? So let's look at some of these examples here. So we were mentioning before about the phylogenetic responses. So maybe the animal's predisposed to having a response. to different plants, like we were saying with cats and catnip and the jaguar. But then the repetitive behaviors, like Chris was talking about. So in some of these repetitive behaviors, we have to do some exploration, right? So it could be that if we do a little bit more exploration, we can determine what's the reinforcer maintaining the behavior. And let's look at an example where it may be difficult to determine it based on what we're observing, but it takes more investigation. So I'm going to show you a repetitive behavior where it may not be so obvious to you. So I'll just let you watch the video first. I don't think this has audio, so I should probably talk over it. So this enclosure is very, very large. And I know you can't tell from this little snippet of video here. And you'll see as the video expands, there's food here. And the animal didn't go over and eat his food. Instead, he's doing the repetitive behavior, and we can see by the marks on the wall that he's doing it in more than one place. And then we also observed it in the back area. So I'm going to go back to our animal examples here. And it took, some conversations and some more observing. And what we came to determine in that particular situation is that his repetitive behavior was really maintained by attention from people. So he was very interested in people. And so even though, the initial thought was he's going to look forward to going out into this big, amazing place that's been built for him, and he's going to get to go out there and do all these cool things in this big, giant habitat that's bigger than what most places could ever provide. What was more important to him was attention from people, and we actually believe he came to that facility already having had that behavior reinforced, and so he would see people coming and do that behavior, and then people would approach and it would get reinforced. And I think what was happening was it was getting duration built. And then, he would be out there and duration would and so for him, it seems like a rational behavior to do is just keep doing it longer and longer and longer, and eventually somebody will show up. So I think that's what was going on with that particular example. But then we've got other kinds of repetitive behavior that are different, right? So we'll take a look at this one, which is a scenario that we see frequently. And Netta says, made me think about flipper, biting, suckling, and sea lions, often seen as a repetitive behavior. Oh, that's an interesting one. I would be interested in talking to you about that more. So there are other types of repetitive behavior. Some of you guys may recall we did a live stream about adjunctive behavior. And so this one, the reinforcer may not be so obvious, whereas it isn't so much that somebody appears and delivers something that reinforces the behavior, but this kind of behavior is more about what the animal does in between delivery of reinforcers. So they're kind of filling the time in between when reinforcers are delivered. So the activity itself may be reinforcing. So we think about, and the example that's often given with humans is, let's say you're waiting for, a bus, or you're waiting in line. And so what do you do with your time while you're waiting for the reinforcer to be delivered? And so maybe you play on your phone, or maybe you pace back and forth. And so it's just doing something while you're waiting for that reinforcer to be delivered. And so it's a different kind of repetitive behavior. It would take too much time for us to go into all the details about it. But again, so these are kind of those weird behaviors that your traditional approaches don't don't really work, because it's not like somebody walks up and interrupts the behavior and that reinforces the behavior. There's different strategies that we use to address those kinds of behaviors. But often people will be like, oh, that's a weird thing, and people might label it as something that it isn't. But there is reinforcement there, but it's not exactly what you might think, whereas it's a little bit maybe more straightforward with the rhino. All right. So another one that I think is pretty interesting that I wanted to share with you was an example with a duck. And we've talked a lot about things like fear responses and aggressive behavior that are maintained by negative reinforcement, where the animal wants to drive something away. And so they want distance as a reinforcer, but there's also aggressive behavior that's positively reinforced, right? That, there's a good outcome when the animal gives that aggressive behavior. There's something they get out of it. And in case you haven't seen it before, let's take a look at what mating behavior looks like in ducks, especially mallard ducks. To us, it doesn't look very pretty. And I can't imagine, and as you can see, this is two males, right? It's not even a male and a female. And I don't think it's very much fun from our perspective, but biting going on there, we might label that as aggressive, but it's obviously reinforcing to somebody in there because they continue to do it, right? That's our evidence that it's reinforcing. So I'm going to share with you an interesting challenge that I was presented with at one of the zoos where I consult. They had a duck that was imprinted that was a part of an education program. And so here is the interesting scenario. I don't know if you guys were aware of this. I wasn't until I started working on this particular problem. So if a female duck has its ovary damaged, it will actually switch genders. It will become a male duck. I don't know if you guys knew this. I didn't know this until I encountered this. And if you look it up, it's true. And so their plumage will start to change, and they will start changing in their behavior, and they will start behaving like a male duck. And so that is what you're going to see in this particular example. So let me show you the video. Oh, and I'll read Aneta's comment here first. We have had some animals reacting to their reflections in the glass. Some showed fear when they saw another species. Some tried to play with the reflection. Some tried to place behind the reflection. They saw their own enclosure. Oh, so they tried to go behind the reflection, tried to get into it. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay, so let me show you this duck.
That's a little sensitive spot there, Mallory.
That's why volunteers are scared of her.
Okay. Okay.
And this is why volunteers don't want to handle her.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is because she's always going after your arms. But she will also chew buttons and pins and what have you.
Yep.
Okay. Mallory is not a male?
Not anymore. I mean,
Not a female?
she's not female anymore.
Ah.
So we had Mallory for, gosh, what's her acquisition date? Is it on her sign? She was an adult female when we got her, a young adult female.
Those shoes are fun.
Okay. Different shoes. Different pants. All right, look at that. Go to town on that. Yeah. Oh, little tail waggy.
a little gentler on the nibbles. What do you think? Can always pick up the stuffed duck if we need to. Bring it with her.
So hopefully you could kind of see the strategy there was if we can, you know, we weren't going to be able to turn off the drive to do this mating behavior. You know, we talked to, you know, I talked to Dr. Scott Eccles, who's a avian veterinarian, and he basically kind of said that, you know, that wasn't going to happen. You weren't going to be able to turn off that drive. So my thought was, well, let's go ahead and, you know, give the duck something to go ahead and address that response. That's not us. That's not a human. So it gets to do the behavior that it wants to do, but does it on something that's more appropriate. So we gave it the little stuffed duck. And as you can see, you know, he does, you know, I don't know, you know, what's the appropriate pronoun for Mallory as she's transitioning. But, you know, he gets to do the behavior that, you know, he wants to do. And then after he kind of like has it out of his system, he started to relax and, you know, settle down a little bit more and starts to behave a little bit more appropriately. So that was kind of our approach to addressing that kind of aggressive sexual response that's just so much a part of how ducks behave, you know, male ducks behave. So okay, let's see. So that one you can see is a little different than this other one that I'm going to show you. So in this other one, we have a situation where it's a capuchin monkey that had been kept as a pet, was now being now at the zoo, housed at the zoo. And you're going to see that, unfortunately, it does some undesired behaviors around the keepers, but it takes a while for the undesired response to be emitted. So that opens the door for people to reinforce a different response that the animal could do when people are around, and so it also teaches us, you know, a couple things, that the undesired sexual response, you know, has reinforcement history, and it also teaches us that we can build new behaviors that are better to do around people. So I'll go ahead and share this one with you.
No problems.
Weź go do góry, Ania, tu. Lucian, chodź.
Trying to see what the triggers are. Okay. But it took quite a bit to get him started there. A lot of people getting him going, huh? A lot of talking to him and interacting. Somebody may have to talk to the guests to explain what's going on so that they don't do the wrong thing with the monkey. Good. Nice. Nice. He's like, I'm still chewing the last one.
So again, if we were to think about, that monkey doing that behavior, he was just doing what he thought he was supposed to do around people, right? What he thought he was supposed to do around the keepers. So we're giving him something else that works. All right, so which of course leads us to one that I've spoken of in the past, and that is our friend Sirocco. And this is a video that I don't think I've shared with you guys before, but elements you may have seen. But again, Sirocco is a kakapo who was hand raised due to an illness, and just through opportunity, he learned that mating with people's heads was, a way to get sexual gratification, and just through opportunity. And so, similar to some of the things that you've seen already, is we just wanted we weren't going to be able to curb his sexual behavior when conditions were right for that. So what we could do, though, was create a different behavior that would result in that same reinforcing outcome. And so we taught him how to do things like targeting and stationing under conditions in which he wasn't so sexually motivated. Sorry, they're picking up the garbage today. And so we were able to create those behavioral responses at a different time of the year, or under conditions when the rimu fruit wasn't so plentiful, which tends to be the situation that evokes the sexual responses. And so he already had those behaviors in his repertoire. And so when the conditions were right, when he was in the mood to reproduce and try and get on people's heads, we had the opportunity to start teaching him to mate with something else, which happened to be a Croc shoe, because that's what he would steal from the porches. And we suspected that he might be inclined to mate with those. And the reason he was inclined to mate with those is, we think, because those were associated with hand feeding when he was a chick. People would switch into Croc shoes and walk into the place where he was and give him formula. So we assumed that those were associated with good things. So here's some video of us working with him.
Tell me when you've had enough.
Lit up a cigarette and went back to her nest.
He definitely has sex with Crocs.
But that's exactly what it looked like on the female. It's just that. But none of that.
Not
Which
biting
I think.
Looking bad. Target.
Thank you.
Here we go.
I don't want to put my hand in there and hold it for you, because I think that would hurt.
Yes, it hurts.
Whoops, whoops, whoops. I don't want you to see it. It's harder to handle than a seed. Because he really...
Here he comes.
If you pull your fuzzy one up a bit. Or with you. No treats here.
Like you in the least. Unless it's unless I sit upright, but hello.
You've done too good of a job.
Well, yeah.
That could be the only thing, is if I get more in the upright position, whether that means, or would he have done it regardless if you're in that position or not?
Okay. Normally that's a pretty good position. He usually wouldn't have been able to help himself.
So I thought we'd talk about some of the factors that we need to consider when we're looking at these behaviors that seem so weird. It's weird that Sirocco decided to mate with people's heads, right? So we have to think about the conditions that occasion the behavior, which, is sort of a normal process we go through anyway, and what are the outcomes that the animal may be getting. And I know it's a little tougher, like with the giraffe example, when we're talking about adjunctive behavior. And sometimes it's hard to determine what those outcomes may be. Obviously, with Sirocco, it was pretty obvious what he was getting. But another thing that we want to think about are the degrees of freedom. Is that reinforcer only accessed by doing the identified behavior? And that can really kind of tell you that animal's sort of coerced into doing that behavior sometimes. If it had other ways to access that desired outcome, it may not do that weird behavior. It may go do other things. So that might be a thing to explore. And then, of course, nonlinear contingency analysis is also important. What other contingencies impact the behavior? You may need to look further than what you see at first glance. And I think that was what was really important about things like the rhino and again, also the giraffe example. Those nonlinear relationships tell us a lot. I think sometimes when we get stuck in our single linear analysis, we miss the other components that are actually contributing to why the animal is doing the behavior. And that's where we sort of get stuck in the, it's something wrong internally with the animal that is creating the problem that you see. So those are important things to consider. And again, another argument for why we really want to look at these contributions from Gold Diamond that we keep talking about, and that Joe Lang and Paul help us see a lot better with articles like this one about the hallucinatory behavior. So again, I highly encourage it, because you're going to see the parallels. If you get a chance to read that article, you'll see the parallels with behaviors that you feel like, well, they're just so weird. They just must be some pathological problem with the animal. But if you look at these things and compare it to something like seeing things, you'll be able to start seeing the rationality in some of these behaviors that you're like, whoa, that's so weird. So first, if we would look at solutions, a question we might ask ourselves, like we do in our Big for Animals, if you've gone to bigforanimals.com, our behavior intervention guidelines, where the first questions you might ask is, behavior change justified? Is it needed? Is it desired? So like when we looked at the jaguar playing with the sage, and we looked at my parrot singing songs, or the lyrebird, those are things that we might go, well, that's weird behavior, but it's not problematic behavior. Or like the dog rolling in dead things, maybe we don't care so much. It means a stinky dog that you have to wash, but maybe you just go, well, you had a great time. And same with the sage. In fact, with the jaguar and the sage, we I don't know if you heard it on the video there, but the team there said, they're going to grow more of that particular sage outside of the habitat, so they can use some of it to offer at the end of training sessions as something that the animal can engage with when keepers walk away after a training session, so that the animal is not seeking more time interacting with the keeper, they can just go on. Oh, that reminds me, I think I forgot one more video I wanted to show you with the Jaguar, and it's a really good one, so I'll save that for after we finish talking about this slide here. So one of the things we can do is we can if there are conditions that occasion the undesired behavior, we can avoid or change those conditions if possible, and we can teach a new easy to accomplish behavior that results in the same outcomes. So that segues great into our Jaguar video. So the Jaguar, so this particular Jaguar was hand raised, and I don't remember why that had to happen, but because of that, this animal is receptive to touch. And in fact, it really likes touch. And the team there wanted to be able to use touch because it as a reinforcer, because it had been really helpful for them for doing things like injection training and taking a blood sample. And they had been able to use that in the past. But what they found is if they, as they were touching the animal, it would evoke this weird foot sucking behavior, similar to like what Annetta was talking about with the flipper sucking on the sea lions. And so that's what they would see in the Jaguar. And it would really, you'll see, it's just really extreme and bizarre, and they didn't like it. The team didn't like it. So we wanted to work on how could we teach the Jaguar to participate in a training session, allow touch, but not curl into a ball and do this paw sucking behavior. So our strategy was, where is there a location where the animal is less likely to do that action, that curling and sucking its paw? It was more likely to do it, unfortunately, in the back area, which is where we would prefer to do that kind of training, because we didn't really want the public, seeing them doing touching on the Jaguar. And it was less likely to do it in a certain habitat on display, because they have 3 habitats where they can rotate their cats. And so we chose the one habitat where it was less likely to do that. And we did our training session there, and we would have the keepers would barely touch the cat. And then, if the cat stayed in sort of a more upright position, not curling, they could continue, but if the cat started to curl, they would sort of back off with the touching. And so it was sort of that, actually like the podcast we were talking about, where it was synchronous, but then it would stop if the behavior was undesired. So it was sort of an on, off, based on the animal's response. And we were also using food if the animal would respond to it, but the food probably wasn't really as critical as the touch. So here is that video.
I can get them calm and you can feed them.
You want me to feed? Or are you going to grab the
It's a long video, I'm sorry, but it's pretty cool.
Oh, there's a bee.
Maybe we can recover back into normalcy.
Maybe. He's not eating more.
So that's what happens. Yeah. You touch him and he starts biting his own paw.
And we just noticed, like, it used to take a lot to get into this, and I feel like he goes into this more quickly. Yeah. Like, we used to be able to have sessions, and I think he would get, amped up. But yeah, sometimes just the action of us walking in.
He goes straight to this.
He goes straight to this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because he does it when he sees you on the window.
And even if he's on exhibit and we walk by,
he'll do this.
Yeah. And then we get calls about the Jaguar's foot stuck in his mouth.
And stuck on a plant.
Yeah.
Stuck on a plant's pretty common.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, like what we might call this in the people world is self-stimulatory behavior.
Yeah.
So it's just self-stimulation.
And he used to hold a rug really long. I mean, you would sit there and just scratch him for like 5 minutes. So,
well, and
it might have been.
we've pulled blood and injected him in his tail before, and now we like can't even get him really to stay in that position because he immediately.
Usually, that's why we went to food over touch, because the touch seemed to do this, whereas the food he would work.
He would work a little better, but even.
Boy. Good boy.
She's like, oh, surprise. Oh, he dropped it. Oh, nice call on the stop. Nice.
Just keep going. Do I pause?
Oh, he spit it out.
Boy.
I mean, you can try if you think he will take it, but he may not.
Good boy. Can I have the tongs?
I will get them for you.
Good. Good. Tail. Good boy. Tail.
Try it, Hilda. Excellent. Oh, he spit it out.
Oh. He didn't even grab that one either.
Okay. Okay, he's doing a little paw action.
Paw.
Oh, but he stopped very quickly.
Good boy. Cut.
Oh.
Good. Tail. Tail. Cut. Thanks. Squeezing his tail. Good boy.
So the tail seems to be a bigger trigger, huh?
Yep.
But when you're touching his side, he doesn't do it so much.
I can get him.
So, but you can see that they made really good progress in that one session when we started working him out in that other area and just doing a little bit at a time and working up to the point where, and getting an idea of what would push it to the point that he would be like, oh, now I want to maybe chew on my paw. But yeah, so the good news is I think that, with that strategy, they'll be able to keep touch as a reinforcer that will be able to be useful for them to do, blood draws and injections for him. So still be a useful tool for him. All right, so just to recap here then, behaviors that may be labeled irrational or weird by people. Very interesting, says Anota. Yeah, it was a really interesting problem, and, they were concerned that, that was no longer going to be a reinforcer that they could use because it would evoke those undesired responses, but we were able to work towards getting him on track there, so. And it's an important reinforcer for that animal. There are some big cats where touch can be pretty important, but you just have to be careful in how you use it and how you apply it. Okay, so again, behaviors that may be labeled irrational or weird by people upon further exploration are rational to the animal. As with many animal or behavior interventions, we may first need to look at the phylogeny and the ethology of the species to see what behaviors may be in their repertoire as a species. So it may be just a kind of a normal part of what they do. And then we look at the reinforcement history to see what conditions and consequences contributed to building the behavior. And as we are learning, nonlinear contingency analysis is essential to helping understand how behaviors are maintained, especially those ones that may seem less straightforward to us. And if change is desired, we can look for new responses that can result in the same desired outcomes and consider increasing degrees of freedom so that animals have many ways to access those critical reinforcers. So hopefully that gave you some food for thought. And if you need some deeper exploration on some of the things we discussed, there are some more resources in animaltrainingfundamentals.com. We have a You Be the Behavior Consultant that goes more into adjunctive behaviors, like the example with the giraffe in the pole licking. We have a link to get to that Addressing Repetitive Behaviors document from Miyaza that we created. That's a really nice document. There's the Behavior Intervention Guidelines. If you are not a member, you can get that at bigforanimals.com. And then the nonlinear contingency analysis course, Beyond ABC, that's a great course if you haven't seen that one yet. And there's an excellent one on degrees of freedom that Sean Will and Masa Nishimuta did for us as a GOATS presentation. There's also You Be the Behavior Consultant about ethology and animal training and how that impacts what we do. There's and so those are the resources that are related to this discussion today. And then just some new things that have been put out recently. There's a couple of podcasts on animal training growing pains and reinforcement tactics, which I did mention when I talked about the synchronous reinforcement with the Jaguar there. So you can learn more about synchronous reinforcement, conjugate reinforcement, and episodic, and what else is in there? Oh, demand functions. And we do have a live stream on demand functions too. And if you are a member, tomorrow we're back with a Tower Talk. So if you just want to hang out with a bunch of us and talk about training, please join us tomorrow at 11. And here is the citation for today's presentation, or whatever you want to call it. You be the behavior consultant, and I believe that covers it for today. Oh, and yeah, just to mention, if you're not a member of animaltrainingfundamentals.com, please do come hang out with us. We've got so many courses and materials and information for you, and lots of different options on how you can join monthly or annual, or if you're a facility, that's our best deal. So there you go. That is our live stream for today. And Annetta says weird behaviors are always interesting when we look for reasons. Thank you for a great Monday, and Annetta will be with us tomorrow. So if you guys want to come hang out and chat with at least me and Annetta, we'll be there. All right, guys. There you go. We didn't do too bad. We got to look at some videos of animals doing some unusual things and learn a little bit about hallucinations in people. And I really do encourage you to read that article. It's not super long, and like I said in the Animal Trainer Growing Pains, I just put things in. I use Microsoft Edge as my PDF reader, and I just click read aloud, and I let Microsoft Edge read PDFs to me. and that way I don't have to, I can be doing other things like cleaning bird cages. Oh, and Chris can't be there tomorrow. Oh, darn. I was looking forward to catching up with you. Well, next time. All right, guys. But yeah, so it's a great article. I highly encourage you to read it. And it is open access, so you don't have to have access to a library to get that one. All right, folks, I believe that is it. Oh, no, Chris, you will be missed. Yes, Annetta, I agree. We want to hear the latest updates on this dog that rolls in dead things, like many dogs do, I guess. My dog doesn't, though. He doesn't care. We walk by a dead bird that's been out on the sidewalk for quite a while now, and he doesn't care. Oh, well. All right, guys. Well, thank you again for being here, and I look forward to seeing some of you tomorrow, like Cynthia. Okay, awesome. All right, guys. Take care. You have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye.